Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I've been having technical difficulties. I actually was going to try to give you a little soft music to ease into your afternoon, but I can't seem to get everything working today. Welcome again to the Blue Ribbon Task Force on Screen Time. And if any of this early stuff was easy, it's probably not easy from this point on, right? Drafting recommendations to the state board. As you know, the state board asked, and you graciously agreed to serve on this task force to develop recommendations to them as to what they may consider in giving recommendations to school districts around the general screen time. So, you know, we've broken that up into 3 topics, and we'll be taking each of these separate over the next several weeks. And as we enter into a new portion of this, just know that there are some things that we'll be seeing how they go, and I know our co-chairs will be trying to lead you as best as they can through this. As you know, there are many important topics related to this broad area of technology and electronic device use in school. The state board recognized it would be impossible for us to tackle all the tasks, and that's why they went through a process very similar to what you're going to be going through over the next several weeks, which is take all of these various issues and they boiled those down, where those 3 that we brought forward are the 3 that the state school board all agreed to should move forward. While there were other things that were certainly on their list, those were the top 3. Therefore, as we go through the next several weeks, the task force will be voting only on those items in any of those 3 categories we've been discussing. As you remember, today is going to be all about personal device use in school, unless we get done with that today, and then we'll go to the second topic, which is screen time and mental health, and parental oversight of district-owned devices. So if there were some suggestions outside of that, just realize those have been captured, but they won't necessarily come to a vote, as we're trying to make sure we stay within those 3 topics put forward by the state board. The suggestions, again, outside the task force scope, are listed at the end of the survey that Peyton sent out this morning. But again, there won't be any formal vote taken on those. Some of those suggestions may prove to be beneficial, and the state board may, again, choose to do anything they want, and those will certainly be shared with them, just no vote will be taken. Speaking of votes, I know Brian will go over this with you as the co-chair, but as we get into today, I think some people raised before, you know, are we following Robert's Rules of Order? No. So, and coming off a state board meeting when there was a lot of discussion around what's an absentee vote. So today you'll have the opportunity to vote, yes, pick me, yes, no, I don't like that, or you can abstain. So the question then becomes, I think it's pretty easy to know, what is a yes vote? It means you agree with the motion brought forward. A no vote is I disagree. An abstention is, for any reason, I'm present, but I just don't feel like voting on this issue. If you abstain, you will not be counted as a yes or a no vote in its tally. That differs from some other bodies, including ours, the state board, where that's counted as a no vote, or it doesn't count for the majority. So again, Brian will go over this with you later, but this will be a plurality or a majority of the quorum here today. So if a majority of the quorum here today votes yes, it passes. If a majority of the quorum votes no, it will fail. Any abstention votes are recorded as abstention, but they don't count in that total of yes or no. And Brian will go over that with you later, but I just kind of want to throw that out because all of you serve on different boards and committees, and my guess they all operate differently because they do. That's certainly true. So again, I welcome you and thank you for your work so far. Thank you for the work you'll be putting in over the next 4 weeks, 3 weeks, and the recommendations you'll be bringing to the state board. And with that, I will turn this over to our co-chairs, Brian and Ava.
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Hello, everyone. This morning, you should have received an email from Peyton with the results of the recommendation survey that was sent on Monday, as well as a link to the second survey. So this survey will be closed. The previous one from Wednesday, it is now closed. And if you didn't get those responses in, we are very sorry, but you will be able to get your voice heard with the second survey that has listed additional recommendations that were provided by members of the group. So if you have not already filled out the second survey, we'll give you some time to complete that in a second. But just please remember that we won't be moving backward back to that old survey just because it has already closed. So if you have not filled out the second survey already, we will give you a chance to complete that now. So we'll pause for a couple of minutes if you want to pull up your email and enter your submissions.
Are you wanting us to go through all of these right now?
We just need you to fill out the second survey that Peyton sent.
Right.
If you want to look at the results from the first survey, we'll talk about those more in a second. But just some time to fill out that second survey with the other recommendations.
Okay, because each one of these is pretty robust and sometimes says two kind of different things. So I don't know that I want to like fly through this. Are we like, is this our full activity that we're doing? So we have the next hour, or I guess?
No, we're actually going to move on here pretty quick. So we were just taking a couple of minutes to go through and fill those out for anybody who didn't have a chance to do so earlier today.
Oh, you mean the first survey?
No, the second
No.
survey.
The
The first survey is closed. The second survey was sent out a little earlier today by, I believe Peyton sent it out. So
yes, I have it. I have it. But okay, but there's, I mean, like the first question alone kind of says two different things that would require me to have two different answers. So I kind of feel like, well, what am I answering here? The first sentence is one thing, the second sentence is another. So
We just encourage you to answer the best that you can, but for the sake of the meeting, we do need to go ahead and move on and get started. So you're welcome to go ahead and continue to work on those while we're talking.
okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Does anybody need just a couple more minutes before we get going?
Is there actually two surveys?
There was one that was sent out on Monday. That, like Ava said, that one's closed, and then Peyton sent out one earlier today. There was a follow-up with just a few additional items to vote on.
And when does this one need to be done?
I didn't get it.
It would need to be done as soon as possible, Erica, preferably.
And I didn't get it.
Did you receive an email from Peyton earlier today, Danny?
No, I got one yesterday or Monday. I filled out the survey on Monday.
Peyton will make sure that, or Michaela will make sure that we get that sent to you.
Thank you.
Is there a reason why we have to finish this one kind of under the gun? And then this is supposed to be our votes and things?
Well, as we get started here in a minute, what we're going to focus on, Erica, is we're going to focus on the items that were in the first survey. This was just a chance to kind of go through some of those supplementary materials or some of those supplementary items. So as we start with the motions that we start going through, it'll be stuff that was in that first survey that was needed to be responded to by yesterday.
Mr. Chair, can I say a statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it captures us live in. I'll share them in a minute. If you can get to question 10 right now, trying to look here. Question 10 will take us to personal devices. Question 11 starts to move into another section. So if we can get to section 10 on this, you can take more time later to do the other ones. Does that make sense? So once you've got to section 10, I think we'll be good to start talking about it.
Okay. So for the sake of the meeting, we're going to go ahead and kind of go through just so we kind of stay on track and make sure we respect everybody's time. First, there was a lot of information we covered last week, so we really want to make sure that we recognize that. And if you have questions as we go, make sure that you do ask. Ava and I will not be monitoring the chat very much. KSDE may be able to respond to stuff, so as we go through and we start to get into discussions, make sure that we have those questions raised. We'll raise your hand or just engage via Zoom, via the regular features of Zoom. The survey results, as we go through them, they're more than anything meant to help us inform our decision making. For example, if almost everybody voted that they're not interested in a recommendation, we probably don't really need to spend a whole lot of time on that particular item. We're going to have KSDE continue to go through the results of the recommendation survey and the additional recommendations in depth, and we will have a chance to discuss those after our breakout groups this morning. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to KSDE so they can go over the results of the initial survey.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, everybody. So I'm going to just talk through a couple things here and then happy to take any questions. So before we look at some of this survey stuff, what you have is you have the completed survey. It looks, you'll see your pie charts. So a couple things on this survey. One is today we are only focusing on the personal device kind of section. And so there'll be more there, but we want to just really hone in here. And so we will give you time, as the chair said, to just look at that, ask questions, and think about that. One of the things I want to bring up when you're analyzing the survey is if you look at the pie charts, those questions you could answer for multiple areas. So you could pick elementary, middle, and high. So at first glance, you would like to look at the majority. The long short is we had 30 individuals take this survey, and we have more than 30 responses on each. So it will give you an indication of where we are, but that's not a straight majority. because multiple people could respond there. So keep an eye on the pie charts on kind of taking a look at that. The other thing we're going to try to do is we're going to try to chunk recommendations. It's not off preference of, we think this is good or bad, but simply because some of are mutually exclusive. If we say that we want teacher discretion, that obviously changes the way we talk about a bell-to-bell policy. And so what we try to do is when we get to the recommendations later, they just chunk some of those. So I'm going to share my screen really quick. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but I'm going to give that time to you to look at this. So if we're doing this right, you should see my screen, which has, all right, what I'm on is the survey that you were all just working on. So remember the scale of 1 is I'm not at all interested. 5 is extremely interested. They both generally have that frame. So here we have 30 respondents on the first survey that you had that is now closed. This survey had all 3 sections. Starting in number 2, we talk about designated time during the school day for where personal devices should be. We're going to give you time to just look at these yourself. Then you'll get time to talk about them in groups to see what's coming up. Some ones I want to bring up. Number 5, you won't see today on our recommendation list. This is a clear majority from us. Recommend teacher discretion for personal devices. People weren't interested in that, so we didn't put that on the list to consider. The other one we want to bring up is number 7. Recommended the State Board of Education does not issue guidance on recommendation on personal devices. The average response was low enough that right now you won't see that at the top of that list by any means. So through the rest of this, you will see all the questions that were posed to you, and you will see the average response. The higher the average, the more inclined people were saying, I'm interested in this. And again, you'll have a copy of that to review today. What I want to show you here is this is the screen time and mental health survey that is currently open and will stay open after this meeting. So kind of, Erica, to your point, some of these you want to take longer with. The first 10 questions, minus your name, are questions that are going to do on personal devices. These questions will come up today in the way that we structure out your ability to make a motion and to vote. One of the things we tried to do is honor the way people wrote things. We were not trying to change anyone's words. And so you will see them the way that we received them. The only thing we did in some cases is when there was clear distinctions, we would break out the distinctions when one response was asking 2 or 3 different things. So what we have here is, I'm just going to kind of hit the blanket really quick so you kind of know what we're talking about. The question number 2, what we're talking about is a blanket exception for all students with IEPs, meaning if we do a bell-to-bell policy, there will be an exemption for those who have an IEP or a 504, say someone with diabetes who may use some type of electronic device to help with that. We actually can look right here. This is not the total responses, but what we're looking at right now, 4.28 is the average. So many people are interested in some kind of exception there. The next one we have is we had a comment on kind of defining what a phone-free school would be, and specifically on this bell-to-bell policy. You will notice in here it has aspects of other things that we will be voting on specifically, talking about where it's stored, secure or not, off the student, what personal devices mean. You'll be able to read through that one. The next one, for the fourth one we'll look at, is this question is talking about a personal device policy for staff members, not just for students. The fifth one we have here on our list is, so this has a little bit of 2 parts, but one is talking about creating a co-created plan with your community and defining that as students, parents, teachers, school board members, and administrators. And then it inserts here, but does not provide, meaning us in this report, a recommendation on the specifics around the policy. So each community should have a policy. We will not define what that policy is as long as it's co-created with kind of that ecosystem is named. Again, we're only going to go to 10, so that's why I'm kind of going so long. Number 6, the way I describe number 6 is, it's a bigger one. I know you want time with this. It is, I would say it is setting the standard of what we want out of students and what we want to avoid, specifically infringing upon personal property and making schools feel more like a prison by the way that we're having checking and procedures because of all the restrictions on there. Again, I recommend please read the specific text. Number 7, this is talking about the process for teachers to report technology gaps and discouraging teachers to use personal devices during those gaps. So if devices aren't followed, are we requiring people to show up? This is very much built in that kind of the have and have nots space of what happens if a student shows up and does not have access to that same technology. How is their experience at school different? Number 8, this is amending kind of the way we've talked about it, and I think we'll discuss this. We said phone-free school, and that this is an amendment just to include personal devices such as earpods, headphones, smartwatches, etc. And again, you can see these, and we will send you all of the results. Number 9, last 2 here. Number 9 is advising districts and local schools to develop robust safety and emergency procedures that are not dependent on students contacting authorities. And then number 10 is similar, the importance of phones to still be off and locked away during an emergency. So we have a couple emergency ones there. I know it's a lot to take in. Let me just reiterate, you will get those results of the ones that you recommended. You have the results of the other recommendations, and you will see all of these put into what we will see later today, which is all of the recommendations laid out so that you as the task force can make a motion, discuss, vote, and go on that forth. So Chair, I turn the time back to you.
I've got a question.
Please go ahead.
I'm curious how these are going to be interpreted. So for example, with number 9, the answer's pretty obvious. I can't imagine anybody is going to put anything but a 5, but that really doesn't, that could be then turned into making it look like, well, everybody agrees that students don't need personal devices for safety and emergency procedures, right? I guess it's a little, it's a little frustrating, or I guess I should say maybe I just am not sure exactly how this is going to be translated into results here. Because even in the first survey, I felt like the questions were boxed in. And at least there were a couple of open cells where you could write a little more long form and not necessarily just be stuck to clicking on your score. But maybe you can help me understand that a little bit more, because it feels very much like it's being guided somewhere. Even though I appreciate the explanation and that it helps a lot, what you were saying of using some of the specific responses and creating these questions. But when we put our 1 through 5 for each one of these things, what is that going to end up meaning? And like the question 9 to me seems like, why would we even have that there? If not for the purpose of being able to then say later, like, oh, well, everybody felt strongly about this. So maybe you can help me understand better. Thanks.
I think more than anything, as we get going with this, Erica, we wanted just to provide a kicking off point with those survey results, to open it up to the committee to have things to talk about, based off what our research has provided with us, based off what our presenters have provided us with. So more than anything, we're not trying to guide it in any one direction. We want to make sure that we respect the voice of every committee member, and that make sure that everybody has a chance to be heard. And as putting together the survey, is that the intent is to do just that. So as we get going, everybody will have a chance to share their opinion, have an opportunity to make motions or second motions, or vote in favor or against, and and have a chance to discuss. We'll make sure that we discuss everything that's there. Just because something is listed as a motion doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna carry the votes of every committee member and pass it through. So as we go, we will do our very best to make sure that we honor the voice of the majority as we move forward. So I appreciate your thoughts and appreciate your comments.
Okay, so next thing, we are going to go ahead and move into our breakout room. So this is a little bit different from before, but before we go, we do want you to give you guys the chance to read through the results of those surveys, just because they are important to making sure that your voice is heard. So if you just want to do that on your own, gather your thoughts, or consider any questions you might have, you can turn off your cameras, and we'll give you just a few minutes to consider those surveys. And if you do have any questions, just please raise your hand throughout this time. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and come back together. And you guys can keep reading those throughout the meeting. If you have any questions, please let us know now. If not, though, we'll go ahead and move on to our next part of this. So in just a moment, the breakout rooms are going to open. We want you to use this time to really discuss your thoughts, weigh the pros and cons of the different recommendations, and talk through a few discussion questions. So this is a really great opportunity to make your voice heard in a bigger group. So we have a few discussion questions that are directly linked to what we're trying to do and what the Board of Education wants us to do. So I'll read these slowly, and then if you need them repeated when you get back into your breakout rooms, that is totally fine. So our first question is, does the research support this recommendation? Question number 2 is, does this recommendation empower local control? The third question is, where is the burden to enforce this recommendation? Number 4, is there an excessive or unrealistic burden on any group of people? Number 5, are there financial implications to this recommendation? The sixth question is the recommendation realistic both in theory and in practice? And then our last question we want you to consider is, does this recommendation fall within the authority of the Kansas State Board of Education? So if you guys, the breakout rooms will begin here shortly. And if you could head to your breakout room and kind of talk from there, that would be great. Thank you.
given the time frame, we won't make it through very many of them today. So what I'd like to do is kind of spend a little bit of time kind of going over how voting will work and how the motions will work. So I'm going to kind of review the processes that we've talked about last week and just kind of make sure everybody's familiar with those. So bear with me as we go through. We're going to put the recommendations on the screen, and they will be in a specific order. And that's going to be based on two things. First, they're going to be based on the items that have the majority. And second, they're going to be ordered in a way that they don't contradict each other. Ava and I will go through the recommendations one by one and ask for a motion. I want to take a moment and review the process that we talked about last week for making a motion. So if you would like to make a motion to adopt a recommendation, use the raise your hand feature on Zoom. Each motion will need a second, and if you want to second a motion, you don't have to raise your hand. You could just unmute yourself at that time and say, I would like to second this. Once we have a motion and a second, we'll have a chance to discuss, and during that time, you may explain to the whole group why you want to vote for something or why you want to vote against something. It's important to note, we're going to keep the discussion at 10 minutes. And when we're doing so, we want to make sure that we recognize the ability or the opportunity for everybody to speak. We want to make sure that we go through and we let everybody, 38 strong, share their opinions, share their voice. So we want to make sure that as we're going through, we do that. After the discussion is ended, a poll to vote will appear on your screen, and you're going to have the option to vote yes, no, or abstain. Just like Dr. Watson said at the beginning, if you abstain, your vote will be recorded as an abstention, but it will not be factored into the number of votes required for majority. So for example, to pass a motion must receive the majority out of the yes and the no votes. If we have 30 people vote, but 5 people abstain, the total number of votes being counted is 25, and you need to vote yes for votes for a majority. We would need 13 yes votes for a majority. Does anyone have any questions about the process?
Kim, would you like to ask your question first?
Sure. Just so I understand, so each recommendation as written, we will choose to have a motion on it. We can't come up with our own motion. It's just what we've already voted on through the survey. Each one of those could become an individual motion.
We believe that each person, going through the discussions, we've recorded an opportunity or had an opportunity to record general thoughts and kind of get the spirit of what everybody tried to say as accurately as possible. So we'll go through and make, we'll let everybody make their motions. We'll second, and then we'll move into the discussion phase.
I'm not sure that answered my question. So we can make a motion on each recommendation as we move through, but we can't do a bigger motion with other information in it.
As much as possible, we'd like to try to keep them streamlined to the motions that are, or to the recommendations that are brought up to start with. And then
Okay, thank you.
We can add to that as we move on. John, did you have a question?
I don't know if it's a question, probably more of a statement. I feel like this is getting very complex very quickly. And I feel like I've read other things. I understand we want to get this to the state board quickly, but at the same time, I'm not sure how many districts are going to try and implement this prior to the next school year, like really fidelity. Is there any chance the state school board would extend this? I know that adds meetings, but I feel like this is going to get really complicated and we're going to start rushing this process instead of giving it the due diligence we probably should.
That's a question we'll have to give to KSDE.
The state board wanted this in November so that they could take final action on it in December. After December, current state board will no longer be in that same format. There'll be new board members coming on that will not have any knowledge of this process. So this board was trying to wrap that up, John. So that was the intent of getting something to them in November. Now that being said, if there's a feeling that you want to take a little bit more time as you look at these motions, I think that can be done. But I think still trying to get them something by November was the charge that the state board asked us to do. And that was the reason, John.
Okay, Scott.
Yeah, I just kind of a follow up on previous questions. So, are the motions going to be provided to us, or are we to make motions off of information and how we see it?
The motions will be provided through screen sharing. So KSD staff will share them in a moment when we get started. And then we'll ask for somebody to make a motion on what is on the screen.
I guess I'm still just a little confused about that, because if the motions are going to be provided for us, then our only thing is to say, yes, I move what's been provided for us. Is that correct?
So you can amend the motions that are on there. Or if you have something else to comment, you can always email that. And we'll try to make sure. But the point of the surveys was to kind of get those other motions that might not have been mentioned on the first survey, kind of through that, just chatting in the different boxes so that you could get your voice heard through that way. And then now we'll look at those and people vote on how interested they are in those new topics that people brought up.
Okay, a little different process than I'm really used to, so we'll try to work.
Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to go ahead and put the document up on the screen that shows the order of the motions and shows how popular they were in the survey.
Does anybody have a motion for the first one listed on the screen?
I can't even.
Can you make it bigger, please?
Information there. I can't necessarily. If I enlarge it, I guess. So we're trying motion one.
Lane, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm ready to make the first motion if you'd like me to.
Is
Yes,
there a
please.
second? Melanie?
I think it'd be good if Lane read the motion just for clarity's sake.
Yeah. I move elementary schools implement a bell-to-bell policy for a phone-free school.
Second it, Kim Whitman.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to discussion on that item up to 10 minutes. And again, we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to discuss. With that said, does anybody have any items to discuss on Lane's motion and Kim's second?
Lane, according to parliamentary procedure, you do have the first right to debate. So if you don't want to talk about it at all, then we can give that over to somebody else.
I'll add that I think that the data we've been shown today shows that although we may have differing opinions in young adults, I think that this specific motion is one that we can almost all agree is beneficial for elementary school students. as well as the things that make us want to maybe vote no for young adults. We can see past that for elementary school students. For example, parents will bring up emergencies. I don't think it's right that elementary school students should be worrying about having their phones on them in case of an emergency, that sort of thing. And going back to equity and all those things, I just think elementary school, we should all be able to agree that this is the right decision.
Okay. Thank you, Lane. Does anybody else have anything to share on motion one?
This is Amy Warren. I'm in my car now, not driving, but I don't know if where my hand raised thing is. Does it matter on this that it says phone free school, that we don't have the devices, smartwatches, Bluetooth, headphones, and all that listed on the motion that we're voting on?
No, that's okay. We'll just take this right now as phone free school. We can circle back to that later, Amy. Thank you.
We can redefine it. Okay, thank you.
We can add that in as an additional motion. I believe that was one of the survey questions on today's survey, so we can look at that one later on.
Okay, thanks.
I don't understand. I don't understand how this is being run. This feels like it's being slammed through. And to say that 16 people decided something for the entire state, frankly, is offensive. And to ban personal device, and to have this come right up front, if this is the recommendation we're going to give, how much more is there to even talk about other than defining what does bell to bell mean? I just think this is highly offensive. And frankly, I think if parents understood the way this was operating today, when we've been speaking for weeks and weeks and weeks, and through today is just really, really.
So does that mean teachers can't have phones either? That we didn't say anything about teachers. So if we're having a bell policy free, that means teachers and administrators and everybody else can have them also. Is that right?
That was one of the survey questions on today's survey, was to flesh that out and to look at do we want to have a guidance for staff?
So this motion is exclusively for students, correct, Brian?
It is. It is, Kim. This was kind of the spirit of this one. And as we're moving through this, we understand, this is a complex process. Going into today, to be honest with you, I was nervous about how today was going to go. I don't want to speak for Ava or any of the KSDE members, but as we get in and we start getting into the weeds, if you will, it gets complex, and it gets, this is where we really want to make sure that everybody's voices and thoughts are heard, and we want to try to respect everybody's opinions. If we feel, I think, I don't want to speak for Ava, but I think we could say, we can go ahead and hit pause today and let everybody spend a little more time diving into the survey results and circle back to next week. Obviously, we want to make sure that we try to respect the state board's wishes and be able to move forward with a recommendation for a guidance in November. And I do want to circle back to that. As Dr. Watson has stressed, whatever we present to the state board is simply going to be recommendations for a guidance. Schools will have the ultimate say on how anything is implemented, and that is critically important. Before we, Amy, you got your hand up, so let's go ahead and if you want to go ahead and share.
Yeah, I was, so just to show my cards, like for instance, on this one, I would be in favor of, I think I'm in favor of voting yes at it, but I was wondering if we could, since we're already kind of running up time, flesh out motions that have a little bit more clarity, because with the process going as it is, I just wondered if there was more to the motion so that we felt really confident with what we were voting towards.
Okay, that's a good point. Chase.
This is kind of why I was asking my question last week about having substitute motions, just to bring clarity to questions and original motions. And maybe we can ask the original motion carrier, Lane, to clarify his motion. But I think in the spirit of this motion, it would be to ban phones for students in elementary schools, and it would include smartwatches, earpods, headphones, all personal devices. I believe that would be what we would need clarity for Lane to vote on. I'm happy to continue voting on these today if the rest of the body is. So I believe these questions were sent out Monday, and everybody was able to take a look and vote on them just to continue the process. But I think just we might need some clarity from the original motion maker, since that's the rules this group voted on and supported that we take on. So,
Chase, Lane,
Yeah,
do you want to amend your motion in any way?
Absolutely, yes. Do I just restate the motion with the?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. I move elementary schools implement a bell to bell, so beginning of the school day to end of the school day, phone, for lack of better words, ban of personal devices, including phones, smartwatches, earbuds, etc.
Okay. Do we have a second on that? Sue? Sue, could you unmute and say that you?
Yes, I second that.
Thank you. Okay.
We will go ahead and discuss this amendment. Kim, what do you have to say?
Well, we just didn't clarify in the motion that it's students only.
I can go back and clarify that too if you'd like.
Go ahead, Lane.
Okay. I move elementary schools implement a bell-to-bell beginning of the school day to the end of the school day policy ban for a phone-free school, students, not teachers, including personal electronic devices such as smartwatches, AirPods, etc. You can amend the language to make that sound as I believe you intended. You believe I intended to say.
Okay, thank you, Lane. Do we have a second on that? Melanie?
Sorry, my hand was up for discussion, but I'm happy.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, thank you, Melanie. Okay, and let's go ahead and open that up for discussion.
So I just wanted some clarity around the previous comment about 16 people making these decisions. The screen that we're looking at says that the survey vote for this first item was 25 out of 5 were in favor of this as a recommendation. Let me state that again, 25 out of 30. How many members are on the task force? It's 36, correct?
36, yes.
So there are 6 people who did not participate in the survey.
Yes.
Okay, and there are a handful of people who have not attended various meetings, even though they had the opportunity to do so.
Correct.
That said, we've still got 30 people who filled out the survey, and that's a pretty overwhelming majority. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
25 people voted that for one segment that was given, not 25 people wanting an overall ban.
As we go through right now, let's make sure we keep the discussion on the item on Lane's motion right now.
This is about the motion and about correcting the math that's there. 25 people did not vote for an all student, all device, all ban. That is not an accurate display of what you sent us in email.
Are there any other discussion items on Lane's motion?
Yes, Kim, and keep in mind, guys, we do have 10 minutes to discuss, as was mentioned when we voted last week on our procedures. So make sure that your points are really concise and expressive to what you want to say. Kim, you can go ahead.
I just really appreciate our ability to go back and clarify this motion so it says every element and defines every element, and I'm extremely supportive of it.
Thank you, Kim. Melanie?
I was just going to ask, since there is a little bit of silence, I would really love to hear from anyone who's teaching in an elementary school or perhaps superintendents. And of course, I always want to hear from the students that are on the panel.
If anyone in those groups, Ava, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm a high school student. I'm not an elementary student, but my school is connected. We're all under one building, elementary, middle, and high school. And we do a lot of activities with our younger elementary students. And from my perspective, and from what I believe many of my teachers would say, there really is no point for these students to have phones during school. Many of them don't have access to phones, but our upper grades in elementary that do have access to phones, like fourth and fifth grade, I believe they're the same amount of distraction, if not more, for those students as is for high school students. So I feel like this motion is really important to protect young kids from the impacts of screens, especially as we know in development, your prefrontal cortex is not where it needs to be, especially all the way from elementary, middle to high school. So I feel like if we don't follow through with this, we're not giving students enough time to develop before they're accessing screens. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ava.
I might speak
Tanya.
as an elementary principal. I think I'm the only elementary principal on here. I will say that I am in full support of this recommendation. We currently in Wichita have a policy that basically says just this for elementary students. So I agree. There is no need for a kindergarten through fifth grade student to have a cell phone out during the course of an instructional day. So totally in agreement.
Thank you. Tanya.
Yeah, I'm having some technology issues, so I apologize if I get cut off here.
That's
But
okay.
we also have had this policy in Blue Valley for elementary students for a couple of years, and I would say that we are our community is in full support of this as well, including we added the electronic devices this year. We were more clear with that, and it has been very well received.
Okay, I think Tana has a question.
I just need some clarification because I think the word ban is not clear. Like, does ban mean the child can't bring that phone to school? Does ban mean no, that phone has to stay off and in their backpack? What does, from a parent's perspective, what would that look like? And I could see that there could be some concerns if you're saying, the phones are banned, well, and that child can't bring it to school. Well, then what if that child walks home and the parent wants to have the kid to have the phone? Like, I think the word ban maybe is not clear.
Okay, Kim?
I feel like the second motion, if you look at that, Tana, it says elementary students store personal devices in a secure location not accessible to them during the school day. Maybe that motion will clarify that. Like, I think we can vote on them separately, is my understanding.
Yes, and for example, I'm not an elementary person, but I can speak to my elementary policy. Our students at the elementary have their devices on them in backpacks or in their lockers. They cannot access them during the day, but if on their way home, if they're walking home, obviously they may need to contact a parent caretaker. And by all means, we would, we want them to have that ability. There's safety concerns or things along those lines. So, I understand your concern there. I think we're approaching the end of the 10 minutes.
Yeah, so a poll will come up on your screen with the options to vote on this recommendation. So as a reminder, a motion must get a majority of yes or no votes in order to pass. So we'll go ahead and wait for that poll to come up, and then you can make your decision. And just keep in mind, we're not awkwardly pausing on you. We're just waiting for all the votes to come in and for that data to be collected.
While that's happening, I'd like to make a suggestion that since a lot of different people have raised concerns about fine tuning the motions, about making sure they're defined well and clearly, about making sure everybody understands the process, how it works and what's expected. Maybe we pause here and fine tune the rest so that next week everybody has that information much more clearly, and we're not sort of defining and winging it along the way.
As we finish up and we get the results of this one, we won't have time to go further. So we will have a chance to break and then reconvene for next week. Ava, I'm going to turn that back over to you. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see the full results from my thing. It's not going through. Brian, you can go ahead and take that out.
That's okay. For Lane's motion on number 1, we had a vote of 86% for yes, a vote of 10% for no, and with 3% abstaining. So it looks like that vote did pass. We appreciate everybody's vote on that. And again, like I was just stating, we don't have time to jump into the second motion because we need about, in the best case, we need at least 15 minutes to be able to make a motion and open it up for discussion and vote. So we are going to go ahead and wrap up just a handful of minutes early today. I know that probably doesn't hurt anybody's feelings too terribly much. If you're like me, you've got a gym full of junior high kids that you need to go supervise. We appreciate everybody being here. Again, KSDE will send out a draft of the first portion, kind of send out kind of a very, very rough draft since we didn't get very far today. And then next week as we come together, again, we'll be sure to make sure that we do our best to clarify procedures that we use. And Ava, any closing comments before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just want everybody to keep in mind, I know that this is a subject that's very passionate for a lot of us, but just keep in mind that any recommendation that we're giving is better than what we have now. So just keep in mind all discussion is beneficial for the students of Kansas because right now we don't have anything to provide students. So there's no clear direction. So thank you guys for giving your time to the task force, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
All right.
Hey, Brian, neighbor.
Yes, sorry, John, go ahead.
So that we have a better idea, can KSDE send those recommendations or those pre-written motions out so we have time to look at those and edit them ahead of time if we want to change them instead of looking at them on the spot? I think that would be helpful.
I'm sure we'll talk about that as we get wrapped up. John?
I have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
So my understanding is that we have next Thursday, the Thursday after that, so is that the 24th? And those are our only 2 other days remaining for motions and discussion. Is that correct?
Well, we didn't get as far as we were hoping to today, honestly. So we will try to move a little bit quicker. Going back to John, we can send out those motions for review. And a reminder, make sure that you do finish the second survey and take time to review the surveys, the results that come out. But we will be moving pretty quickly as we move forward to make sure that we hit that KSDE, their state board's wish.
And Anna, we have one of those dates that we had open, you remember, and so that we may have to, depending on how it goes, we have to flow into that in order to get it accomplished. This gave us, I think, a good idea of the complexity of how we'll have to run it going forward.
Chase, final comment before we head out?
Thanks, Brian. I just wanted to thank you and Ava for just working through all the kinks on this process as I'm trying to get this all figured out. It's probably the first time for many people to be in a process with 30 people or more with strong opinions on a very emotional subject. And so I just want to thank you guys for managing this and working through some of the questions and kinks, because I know there's been criticism of how you word things, or if it's not written, or if it's just verbal, but we have to understand that this is how our government does business. We do it here at the state capitol. We do it probably at the state school board. We do it in our local school boards and our city councils and county commissions. So this is a very normal process, and we're doing the best we can. If we need clarity, we can have clarity, but just wanted to say thank you for trying to help get through this process.
All right. Thanks, Chase. And with that, I think we are finished for this week. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you all soon.